DC Comics has made a lot of goofy things over the years. Batman patented shark repellent, Code Piece's crotch cannon, the entirety of Morbius, and, of course, pink kryptonite that turns Superman aggressively gay.
Get pregnant, you fucking bitch! Get fucking pregnant, you fucking filthy whore!
Just kidding. Morbius is a Marvel property. There's been a lot of gimmick characters throughout the history of DC, which is why I wanted to put together a video explaining some of the most interesting things I've discovered. Take this comic book, for example. Is it possible to sell an entire storyline on the backbone of the mysterious, quote-unquote, little person, Joe? Hey, alignment? Bad. American thief? Who has a tragic history of... This article is a stub. You can help DC by expanding it. Oh dear God, this isn't a good sign. So there's a lot of different routes I considered for this video. The older comics have a lot of lines that just don't make any sense for modern readers. Take this wholesome panel where Batman and Joker discuss their boners, for example. It's goofy, sure, but do I really want to make an entire video making fun of comic authors for not predicting how slang would change over 80 years? Yes, but I'm pretty sure other people have done that already. On the other hand, some of these same comics are equally notorious for having clickbait covers meant to get people to read them. But I can't even really blame them for that. I mean, seriously, Batman burned at the stake by Superman. Superman murders Lois Lane? Lois becomes black for 24 hours. As a white man in 1970, all of these covers are equally alarming. Honestly, my only complaint is that they should have committed more to the bit and put a soy jack in the corner. So where do we start then? Well, I decided to lock myself in my room until I found at least 3 examples for this video. And I'm proud to say I can at least start with one. Is the scene over? A character so weird it convinced me to make this video in the first place. Hemo-Goblin. If you've never heard of him, I would not be surprised. He only appeared in one comic, the first ever issue of The New Guardians. Being the very first villain introduced in a new comic line, you'd think he'd be worth remembering, and trust me, he is. The New Guardians were a superhero team created during a crossover event known as Millennium. Basically, this weird alien dude and his hot female OC from another universe decided that they wanted to jumpstart human evolution by giving superpowers and borderline immortality to 10 random people. The only issue is their powers have an upload speed slower than my computer trying to process all the overlapping metal pipe sound effects. The Guardians of the Universe could have mitigated this issue by teleporting the people somewhere safe, but they were too busy repopulating, and so that responsibility fell to the world's best superheroes. Wonder Woman protects John Wilhelm Krooff. The Flash protects Gregorio de la Vega. The Green Lanterns protect... honestly, I'm not even going to try for that one. And Ronald Reagan protects Salima Barnuziar. Salima is immediately stoned to death. We also find out that the Guardians of the Universe plan to tell the hero, Terra, about this plan separately, because she was supposed to be one of the Guardians. Only, trouble is, she straight up died a few years ago. That's like if God came down to you and said, "Hey man, I decided to help humanity out, so I beamed the cure the cancer onto the Club Penguin server account. Also, don't look at me directly." Like seriously, what would you even do in that situation? I mean, I guess I could say like, awkward. Also, what was that about now? Look at The New Guardians go on to fight the robot Illuminati. More of them die. This one is exiled for being extremely racist, and the rest form the New Guardians. If you thought this was wild so far, just wait. The very first issue opens with a discussion of how the Guardians were not only chosen for their ability to be heroes, but for their, and I quote, superior breeding abilities. I promise this isn't a Wattpad fanfiction written by a 12-year-old girl. This is an official DC comic. In fact, the Guardians were specifically chosen to be as diverse as possible so that the next generation can be a representative of the collective humanity. To that end, the Guardians have a black woman, an Asian man, tree, and a gay Mexican. Don't expect me to explain how the Guardians of the Universe expected the New Guardians to have kids when half of them straight up can't and 2 others seriously don't even know where babies come from. Anyway, I am getting way ahead of myself. The first issue opens with the New Guardians kind of just standing around and wondering what their purpose is. Harbinger and Jet try and figure out why they have the exact same powers and have a mini existential crisis about the nature of human relationships. Extrano, the gay Mexican, supports Harbinger by telling her that it took years for him to discover his identity and that she should take her time. Once again, proving that the conservative stereotype of extremely flamboyant gay men is where humanity truly peaked. Alright, quick side note, because this is the third time I said it, he's not actually Mexican. I read it in an article somewhere, so I just kept putting it in the script, but I checked the DC database while I was editing, and it turns out he's from Peru. I don't even know what to think about this, other than it proves the stereotype that Americans will hear a Spanish accent and immediately go Mexico. Cut to South Africa. It's the apartheid era. For those not in the know, South Africa has historically been under the control of an extremely racist white minority government. For the longest time, they barred black South Africans from certain jobs, government positions, and even prevented them from living in the cities where they worked. It was kind of like the Jim Crow era in American history, but 20 years ago instead of 70. And instead of telling civil rights activists to go back to Africa, the racists just kind of said skill issue. Anyway, to make a long story short, the leader of this government and the de facto CEO of racism is none other than the exiled member of the New Guardians, John Wilhelm Kroof, owner of quite possibly the most white name ever, only behind Braden, or maybe Walter. Kroof didn't appreciate the whole minorities existing thing, and decided he wanted to get revenge on his old team. To do this, he pooled all his money and resources into creating one of the most destructive forces known to man, the dreaded Hemogoblin. Hemogoblin is a vampire specifically designed to only eat non-white people. Alignment bad. To make a long and incredibly goofy story short, Hemogoblin wreaks havoc in the United States. Jet gets cornered and bitten. The gang hunts down the vampire, and they all stone him to death. Honestly, I don't know what Kroof was expecting, sending literal bloodborne fodder to fight a bunch of gods, but yeah, that's about it. If it wasn't for the plot twist, get this, Hemogoblin gave the team AIDS. That's right. This entire story about racism and superheroes and superior breeding and human evolution all turned out to be a covert story about the AIDS crisis. The gang literally spends entire volumes just talking about AIDS, going to AIDS clinics, fighting the concept of entropy itself, and getting AIDS medication. Honestly, the only thing more surprising than the reveal is the fact that the racist AIDS-infected vampire that wears spandex and short shorts isn't gay himself. Now, this idea wasn't doomed from the start. As unserious as a character based around AIDS sounds, Superman introduced a similar villain in the form of Cancer. Cancer was originally a form of, well, cancer that was killing Superman before it was removed. But just like human cancer cells can survive outside the body, Kryptonian cancer cells thrive. They grew and eventually reformed into this giant snake thing that has a weaker version of Superman's base powers and a mini aura of kryptonite. It was basically a cool villain of the week that also happened to have daddy issues. Now, they might have had to take a little bit of creative liberty with how they would rework Hemogoblin like that unless they wanted a Mara Persona 5 situation. But yeah, I think it could have been cool. Before we move on though, I actually want to talk a bit more about the New Guardians. Going into this video, I thought about the team the same way I think about what topic I'm making for the next video. That is to say, not at all. But the more I read, the more I became attached to these guys. The comics are actually really well written, for the most part. And even though some parts can be hard to read, what with the whole strong accents, blatant stereotyping, and child soldiers coked out on meth, I really did find myself rooting for the team. It's a genuine shame that they aren't talked about more often, especially since the cast is so diverse. I joked about it earlier, but Extrano was literally the first ever queer superhero. Plus the Asian and African representation is great too. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just nice to see a story with diverse characters not focus explicitly on the diversity. It's that kind of quiet acceptance set on a backdrop of an actual good story that makes it really worth reading. That's not to say that stories focused on diversity are inherently bad, obviously, but at this point, baby, I'm reading Justice League Queer just for the extra Extrano content. Now, with all that being said, let's check in on our research team and get right into the... Oh god, I died. Well, maybe I wouldn't have starved to death if I had known about the Condiment King. Alright, sorry, that's it. I was gonna do a whole other section. I don't have it in me. I don't know if this video is even gonna do well since it's outside my general demographic, and I'm already at 10 minutes, so I think I'm just gonna cut it here. Yeah. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit me up on my socials. I don't have any socials other than YouTube. Goodbye.